What is the one thing Pierre Poilievre needs to do to retain leadership of the opposition? I have an opinion on that. Unfortunately for Poilievre, he has demonstrated in the past that he lacks the strategic acumen to be a top politician, and he's demonstrating that once again. I'm Steve Sandford, you're watching Dominion Report. Poilievre famously lost his riding in Ottawa-Carleton during the last federal election. That put a real damper on his efforts to become Prime Minister. And the other damper, of course, was that Conservatives losing the election as well. And this despite a 20-point lead in the months leading up to it. I've spoken before on the channel about Poilievre's strategic deficiencies and how they contributed to those losses, and I'll put the links to those videos below. Poilievre wants to remain the party leader, presumably so he can continue to live in government-assisted housing. But there's just one problem. He doesn't actually have a seat in Parliament. So he and the Conservative Party have decided in their wisdom that he will parachute into the most conservative riding in Canada. That is Battle River Crowoot in rural Alberta, where a by-election will be held on August the 18th. So, will he win a seat there? Of course he will. But even so, there's a real strategic issue with this scenario. Poilievre is facing a leadership convention in January of next year, and in my opinion, he's going to struggle to retain the title of party leader. So what do I think he needs to do to actually continue as leader? I'll get to that in a minute. Battle River Crowoot was recently won by incumbent Damien Carrick, who has held the riding since 2019. Carrick gave up his seat, he claims of his own accord, so that the party leader could take an easy win and have a seat in Parliament. I am sure no promises were made regarding cushy ambassadorship appointments or lucrative lobbyist positions, because that would be against the rules. Carrick's election win was with 82.8% of the vote. So yes, Battle River Crowoot is a very conservative riding, and that's why Poilievre is virtually guaranteed the seat. But going into the leadership convention in January, he doesn't have a very good record. The party he leads lost the election even with that 20-point lead. He, as party leader, lost his own seat that he held for over 2 decades. And polling has consistently shown that the party has a higher approval rating than Poilievre does himself. None of those things are going to help his cause. Just saying. There is one thing he could do to help right the good ship Poilievre. There is one W he could put into his column. And I did promise to share that one thing that I think will give him some kind of a chance to retain the leadership. And here it is. He needs to win Battle River Crowoot by more than Damien Carrick did. Yes, that's right. He needs to win by more than Carrick. That's more than 82.8% of the vote. That would demonstrate solid political performance. But that is going to be difficult. Try to imagine you're a resident in Battle River Crowoot. You live in a very rural area of Alberta, and it's been Conservative or Alliance or Reform since the riding was created. You've elected the same representative since 2019. That's through 3 federal elections. All of a sudden, an establishment Ottawa politician shows up. One who lost his own riding and who essentially has no connection to the region and decides to take over the seat from the guy that you've just re-elected. This Ottawa Guy shows up for photo ops wearing a cowboy hat backwards and drinking Coors Light, and then he rides around in the Drumheller Canada Day parade in a Bentley of all cars. And he expects you to vote for him? Look, he's going to win the seat. That's not really a discussion. But will he win the seat with 82.8% of the vote or more? I doubt it. And quite honestly, anything less than 82.8% of the vote probably should be considered a political loss. Strategically, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to select this riding. But that's sort of how Poilievre rolls. It didn't make strategic sense to bring coffee and donuts to Freedom Convoy voters when those protests were happening in and around his own riding. And folks, I don't mean whether you support or don't support the Freedom Convoy. I'm talking about strategically and his own riding. Poilievre should have figured this out, this Battle River Crowfoot scenario before choosing the riding. It appears he may have just selected it because it had the highest percentage of Conservative votes of any riding in Canada. And we haven't even talked yet about the issue of Alberta separation and the hotbed of provincial versus federal politics that he is inserting himself into. Maybe he's playing some kind of 3D chess, and he chose Alberta because of this issue, and he has some kind of grand plan to unite Conservatives across the country. I actually hope that that's true, and I hope, if it is, that he could be successful, because that would be good for Conservatives and that would be good for Canada. But given his lack of strategic vision in the past, it's a pretty faint hope. Now, I know some of you are going to mention the Ottawa-Carleton redistricting issue. I've already made a video on that, so check that below for a link to that video. And I know some others of you are going to want to talk about the longest ballot initiative. And I want to talk about that too, because I have opinions. Shocker, right? And so I'm going to talk about that in an upcoming video. And if you don't want to miss that one, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it.